The Galactic Council chamber fell silent when the human ambassador stood up to speak. Ambassador Chen Wei was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She did not look dangerous, but every alien in the room knew what her species was capable of doing. "We come in peace," she said. "We always have, but we are ready for war if you force us." The Vorthan representative made a sound that humans would call a laugh. He was tall, with blue skin and 4 arms. His species had conquered 12 star systems. They feared nothing and respected only power. "Your peace means nothing," he said. "We have seen your ships. We have watched your soldiers. You are weak. You show mercy to your enemies. This is why you will fall." Ambassador Chen smiled. It was a small smile, but it made several aliens in the room feel cold. There was something in that smile they did not understand, something that spoke of ancient knowledge and terrible experience. "You misunderstand us," she said. "Our mercy is a choice, not a weakness, and our scientists spend their days thinking of new ways to destroy things. They do this so our warriors don't have to use such methods, but make no mistake, the weapons exist. They wait." 300 light-years away, a human research station floated in empty space. The station was called Prometheus Base, named after an old Earth story about fire and knowledge. Dr. Sarah Park stood in front of a window, looking at the stars. She was thinking about death. More specifically, she was thinking about how to cause it on a massive scale. Sarah was not a cruel person. She had a daughter back on Earth named Lisa. She liked to paint flowers in her free time. She cried when she watched sad movies. She donated money to charities that helped children in poor areas. But her job was to create weapons that could end entire civilizations. "The new warhead is ready for testing," said her assistant, a young man named James. He was fresh from the academy, still idealistic, still believing that science should only be used for good things. "The yield is significant." "How significant?" Sarah asked without turning from the window. "It could destroy a planet, crack it open like an egg. Nothing would survive." Sarah nodded. She had expected this. She had designed it to do exactly that. The math had told her it would work. Now the tests confirmed it. "Good," she said. "File the report. Mark it as ready for production." "Dr. Park," James said, his voice careful. He did not want to offend her, but he needed to ask. "Do you ever think about what these weapons will be used for? Do you ever imagine the lives they might end?" Sarah turned to look at him. Her eyes were tired. She had dark circles under them that never seemed to go away. She had not slept well in years. "Every single day," she said. "That's why I make them so terrible. The more horrible the weapon, the less likely anyone is to use it. And if they do use it, the war ends quickly. Fewer people die in the long run. It is a strange logic, but it is true." "That seems backwards." "It is, but it works. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. We invented the atomic bomb back in the 20th century. It was so terrible that we never used it in a real war after the first time. Fear kept the peace. Two great nations pointed enough weapons at each other to destroy the world many times over, and because of this, they never fought directly. Millions of lives were saved by weapons that could kill billions." James was quiet for a moment. He was young, but he was not stupid. He could see the logic even if it made his stomach turn. Then he asked, "What happens if fear isn't enough?" Sarah looked back at the stars. They seemed cold and distant. Somewhere out there, civilizations were watching each other, waiting to see who would strike first. "Then we use the weapons," she said, "and we cry about it later, but we survive. That is all that matters in the end, survival." On the planet Kethros, Captain Marcus Stone led his team through the ruins of a city. The battle had been short but violent. Human forces had defeated the Kethrani military in less than a week. The enemy had expected a long war. They had not expected humans to be so fast, so precise, so overwhelming. Now came the hard part, the part that no training could fully prepare you for. "Sir," said Sergeant Williams, pointing ahead. Survivors, looks like civilians, about 30 of them, maybe more. Marcus looked where she pointed. About 30 Keithrani were huddled in the remains of a building. The building had been beautiful once. Now it was just rubble and ash. The Keithrani themselves were thin, with gray skin and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Some of them were children. They all looked terrified. "Weapons down," Marcus ordered. His team obeyed without question. They had trained for this. They knew the rules. Civilians were not enemies. Civilians were to be protected even when they belonged to the other side. They lowered their rifles and approached slowly, showing their empty hands. The Keithrani cowered. Their history had taught them what to expect from conquerors. When you lost a war, the winners killed you. They took your resources, enslaved your people, and burned what they could not use. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked in the galaxy. But the humans did not kill them. They did not even point their weapons at them. Instead, Marcus knelt down in front of the group. He moved slowly so they would not be afraid. He took off his helmet so they could see his face. He wanted them to see that he was a person, not just a soldier in armor. "We're not going to hurt you," he said. His translator device converted the words into Keithrani language. The words came out as clicks and whistles, strange sounds that Marcus would never be able to make with his human throat. "The fighting is over. We're here to help." An old Keithrani stepped forward. He was shaking, but he stood tall. There was pride in his posture even in defeat. He had been someone important once, maybe a teacher or a leader. Now he was just a survivor in ruins. "You have won," he said. "We are yours to do with as you please. That is the law of war. That is how things have always been." "Not our law," Marcus said. "Our law says we protect civilians. Our law says we help the wounded, even enemy wounded. Our law says we show mercy to those who surrender." The old Keithrani stared at him. His mirror eyes were wide with confusion. He did not understand what he was hearing. "Why?" he asked. "We are your enemies. We attacked your colony. We killed your people. Many of your soldiers died fighting us. Why would you show us kindness?" Marcus thought about the question. It was a good question. Many humans had asked the same thing throughout history. Why help those who hurt you? Why show mercy to those who showed none? "Because we can," he said finally. "Because we choose to. Being able to destroy doesn't mean we have to destroy. Being able to hurt doesn't mean we have to hurt. We have the power to show mercy. So we do." "But what do you gain from this?" Marcus smiled. It was a genuine smile, tired but warm. "Today, nothing. Tomorrow, maybe an ally instead of an enemy. Maybe your children will grow up not hating us. Maybe one day we'll trade with each other instead of fighting. Maybe in 100 years, your great-grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will be friends." He stood up and held out his hand. It was an earth gesture, a sign of peace and greeting. "My name is Marcus Stone. I'm here to help you rebuild." The old Keithrani looked at the hand. He did not know what the gesture meant. His people did not shake hands, but he could see the intention behind it. He reached out and took Marcus's hand anyway. That was the moment everything changed. Not just for the old Keithrani, but for his entire species. That handshake was photographed by a human journalist and broadcast across the galaxy. It became famous. It became a symbol. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. Humans had won the war against Kethros, but instead of conquering the planet, they had helped it recover. They had shared food and medicine. They had repaired damaged buildings. They had treated wounded enemies in their own hospitals, giving them the same care they gave their own soldiers. The Galactic Council was confused. This was not how wars were supposed to end. When you won, you took everything. You crushed your enemy so they could never threaten you again. That was the logical thing to do. That was what every other species did. But humans were not logical. They were something else entirely, something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. "They are weak," the Vorthan representative insisted in the council chambers. This mercy will be their downfall. The Keithrani will recover and attack again. Mark my words, the humans are fools. But the Keithrani did not attack again. Instead, they sent diplomats. They wanted to learn more about these strange creatures who could kill without cruelty, who could conquer without enslaving. The diplomat's name was Kira. She was young and curious, barely an adult by Keithrani standards. She had survived the war as a child, hidden in one of those ruined buildings. She remembered the human soldier who had given her water and a blanket. She remembered his face, his kind eyes, his strange, soft skin. Now she stood in the human embassy on Earth, trying to understand. The embassy was beautiful, full of plants and art and light. Humans seemed to love beauty. They surrounded themselves with it even in official buildings. "Your warriors are trained to kill," she said to Ambassador Chen. "I have seen your soldiers in action. They are efficient and deadly. They move like predators, like hunters. But then they stop. They help. They heal. How do you train for both?" Ambassador Chen poured 2 cups of tea. It was a human ritual, she had explained. Sharing drinks meant friendship and trust. She handed 1 cup to Kira. "It's not about training," she said. "It's about choice. Every human soldier knows they have the power to end lives. That power is real and terrible. But they also know they have the power to save lives. Both are choices. We train them to choose wisely." But how do they know when to kill and when to show mercy? They don't always know. Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes mercy is given to those who don't deserve it. Sometimes death is dealt to those who should have lived. We are not perfect. We have never claimed to be perfect. But we try. Kira sipped her tea. It was warm and sweet. She had never tasted anything like it. Her people drank only water and nutrient solutions. The idea of drinking something just because it tasted good was strange but pleasant. "On Kethros," she said, "we believe that warriors must be cold. Emotion makes you weak. Compassion makes you slow. Mercy makes you vulnerable. Our greatest warriors were the ones who felt nothing at all." "And what do you believe now?" Kira thought about the soldier who had saved her. She thought about his eyes. They had been fierce and gentle at the same time. He had killed enemy soldiers minutes before giving her that water. He had done both things with the same hands. "I believe I was wrong," she said. "I believe we were all wrong. Perhaps feeling everything is stronger than feeling nothing." The research station hummed with activity day and night. Dr. Sarah Park had a new project now. This one was different from her usual work. She had designed weapons of destruction for 20 years. Now she was designing something else. "A shield?" James asked, looking at the design spread across her desk. "I thought we only made weapons here." "This is a weapon," Sarah said. "A defensive one. A shield that can protect an entire planet from orbital bombardment. Nothing gets through. No missiles, no energy beams, no asteroids. Nothing." "That sounds like protection, not a weapon." Sarah smiled. It was the same smile Ambassador Chen had shown the Galactic Council. James was beginning to understand that smile now. It was the smile of someone who knew things that others did not. "The best weapons are the ones that make other weapons useless," she said. "If we can protect our planets from attack, then attacking us becomes pointless. That changes everything. It changes the entire calculus of war." "How so?" "Right now, war is possible because both sides can hurt each other. But if we become unhurtable, war with us becomes suicide. Nobody attacks someone they can't harm. What would be the point?" James nodded slowly. He was beginning to see it now. "So by making ourselves invincible, we make war impossible." "Exactly. Peace through strength. It's an old human idea. We have been using it for centuries. The strongest nations on Earth were often the most peaceful because nobody dared attack them. But what if our enemies develop the same technology?" Sarah's smile widened. For the first time, it looked genuinely happy. Then nobody can hurt anybody, and war becomes truly pointless for everyone. Every species protects itself. Every species is safe. War ends not because people become good, but because war stops working. She returned to her work. In her mind, she saw a future where weapons were so powerful and defenses were so strong that fighting made no sense. A future where the only option was peace. It was a strange way to think about weapons, but humans had always been strange. They had always found unusual paths to their goals. Captain Marcus Stone received new orders 3 months after Kethros. He was being sent to a place called the Thornwood System. There was a problem there. The Vorthen have attacked a neutral colony, his commander explained. The commander's face was grim. He had seen many wars, and this one looked bad. Thousands dead. The survivors need evacuation. The Vorthen are still in the system. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. He had dealt with the Vorthen before. They were proud and cruel. They believed that power meant taking whatever you wanted. They had no concept of mercy. They thought it was weakness. Rules of engagement, he asked. Protect the civilians. Engage Vorthen forces only if necessary. Try to avoid escalation. We don't want a full war. And if they don't let us evacuate peacefully. His commander's face was hard. There was no mercy in his eyes now. Then make them let you, whatever it takes. Marcus gathered his team. They were veterans, all of them. They had fought on a dozen worlds together. They had seen death and caused it. But they had also saved lives. They had held crying children in burning cities. They had carried wounded enemies to safety. They had done things that made them proud and things that made them ashamed. They were warriors, but they were also something more, something that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Listen up, Marcus said. Our job is to get civilians out of the Thornwood system. The Vorthen are in the way. We will ask them nicely to move. If they don't move, we will move them. Any questions? Sergeant Williams raised her hand. What about prisoners, sir? Standard rules. Anyone who surrenders lives. Anyone who doesn't. We're not here to start a war, but we're not here to lose one either. The team nodded. They understood. Mercy was for those who accepted it. For those who didn't, there was something else. Something harder and colder. Something that humans kept locked away until they needed it. The transport ship flew through space toward Thornwood. Marcus looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorthen were waiting. They thought humans were weak because they showed mercy. They thought kindness was the same as softness. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The trip took 3 days. Marcus used the time to prepare. He studied the maps of the system. He learned about the colonies and their populations. He read reports about Vorthen tactics and weaknesses. He meditated and prayed, though he was not sure who he was praying to. His team did the same. They cleaned their weapons, checked their armor, and prepared themselves mentally for what was coming. They did not talk much. They did not need to. They had been together long enough to understand each other without words. When the ship finally arrived at Thornwood, Marcus was ready. He was ready for anything. He was not ready for what he saw. Kira, the diplomat, had become fascinated by human history. She spent hours in the embassy library, reading about Earth's past. The humans had given her access to their entire historical database. They seemed to have no secrets about their history. They were proud of some of it and ashamed of other parts, but they hid nothing. What she found disturbed her deeply. Humans had fought each other constantly. Wars had shaped their entire civilization. They had invented countless ways to kill each other. Swords and spears in the ancient times. Guns and bombs in the Middle Ages of their technology. Chemicals and radiation in their modern era. They had turned murder into a science and destruction into an art form. Every century brought new weapons. Every generation found new ways to cause death. It seemed like humans spent more time thinking about killing than about anything else. But alongside every weapon, there was something else. Laws about how wars should be fought, rules about protecting civilians, agreements to treat prisoners humanely, codes of honor that even enemies were expected to follow. "I don't understand," she told Ambassador Chen during one of their many conversations. "You invented these terrible weapons, but then you made rules to limit how you use them. Why? What is the point of having a weapon if you cannot use it freely?" The ambassador thought carefully before answering. She poured more tea, a ritual that Kira had come to enjoy. "Because we know what we are," she said. "We know that humans can be cruel. We know that war can bring out the worst in us. Our history is full of atrocities, full of moments when we became monsters. So we make rules. We create boundaries. We remind ourselves that even in the darkest times there are lines we should not cross." And do the rules work? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes people break them anyway, but the rules exist. And when someone breaks them, everyone knows it. There is shame. There is punishment. There is judgment from history. The rules matter even when they're broken. They set a standard that we strive to meet. Kira thought about her own people's history. The Keithrani had no such rules. War was simple for them: win or die. The idea of limiting yourself in battle was foreign and strange. It seemed like a way to lose. "It seems complicated," she said. "It is. Everything about humans is complicated. We are capable of great evil and great good. We build weapons of mass destruction and organizations to prevent their use. We train soldiers to kill and doctors to heal. We are contradiction made flesh." "Is that not exhausting?" Ambassador Chen laughed. It was a genuine laugh, warm and sad at the same time. "Yes," she said, "it is very exhausting, but what choice do we have? We cannot stop being what we are. We can only try to be better. We can only keep making rules and keep trying to follow them." The Thornwood system was burning when Marcus arrived. The Vorthen had been thorough in their attack. 3 colonies had been hit. 2 were completely destroyed, their domes cracked open, their populations dead from exposure to space. The 3rd was still fighting, still holding on somehow against overwhelming odds. Marcus and his team landed in the middle of a war zone. Plasma fire filled the air with bright streaks of death. Buildings collapsed in clouds of dust and debris. The screams of the dying mixed with the roar of explosions and the crack of weapons. "Contact right," Williams shouted. Marcus turned and fired. A Vorthen soldier fell, his armor smoking from the impact. Then another fell. Then another. Marcus's team moved like a machine, years of training guiding every step, every shot, every decision. But they didn't just fight. When they found wounded civilians, they stopped to help them. When they found people trapped in rubble, they dug them out. When they found children alone and crying, they carried them to safety. A Vorthen officer watched from a distance through his tactical display. He could not understand what he was seeing. The humans were winning, but they kept stopping. They kept wasting time on the weak. "They divide their attention," he said to his second-in-command. "They waste time with the useless ones. The old, the young, the wounded. This is foolish. This is weakness." "Should we press the attack?" his second asked. "They are distracted." The officer considered. The humans were vulnerable while they helped civilians. This would be a good time to strike. A smart enemy would take advantage. "Yes," he said, "push forward, destroy them while they play with their mercy." The Vorthen charged. 50 soldiers in heavy armor, weapons blazing, expecting an easy victory against distracted opponents. They did not get one. Marcus heard the attack coming before he saw it. His training kicked in automatically. In one smooth motion, he handed the child he was carrying to a medic and raised his weapon. His team did the same. One moment they were gentle helpers. The next they were killers. The Vorthen ran into a wall of fire. Marcus did not think about mercy now. There was no time for mercy. There was only the fight. He fired again and again, each shot precise and deadly. His team moved around him, covering angles, protecting each other, creating overlapping fields of fire that nothing could pass through. In 30 seconds, it was over. 20 Vorthen lay dead. The rest were running, their confidence shattered by the speed and violence of the human response. Marcus did not chase them. Chasing would take him away from the civilians. The civilians were his mission. Instead, he turned back to the people he was protecting. "Status report," he said. His voice was calm, his heart was not. 47 civilians secured, Williams replied. Her hands were still steady on her weapon. 8 wounded, none critical. No civilian deaths on our watch. Good, keep moving. There are more out there. They found more. In basements and shelters. In collapsed buildings and burned-out vehicles. In tunnels and caves where people had fled from the destruction above. Some were alive. Some were not. Marcus treated every survivor with care and every body with respect. The Vorthen officer watched all of this. He did not attack again. He was too confused to attack. Everything he thought he knew about war was being challenged. "How do they switch so fast?" he muttered. "How do they go from killers to saviors in the blink of an eye?" His second had no answer. The evacuation took 3 days. Marcus and his team worked without sleep. They ate when they could and drank water when they remembered to. They fought when they had to and saved when they could. By the end, they had rescued over 2,000 civilians from the system. The Vorthen held the planets, but they had won nothing real. The people were gone. The resources were useless without workers, and the galaxy had watched humans carry children out of fire while fighting off an invading army. The Vorthen's reputation suffered greatly. Humanity's reputation grew even more. Species that had been neutral began to favor humans. Species that had feared humans began to respect them instead. Dr. Sarah Park finished her shield design after 18 months of work. Testing was successful beyond her hopes. A prototype had blocked an asteroid impact that would have devastated a small moon. The shield had held without even flickering. "It works," she told the military council in a secure conference room. "We can protect our worlds, all of them." "And the weapons?" a general asked. He was old and scarred from many battles. "The planet killers?" "Still ready, still waiting in their silos, still capable of destroying anything we point them at." "Good, we hope we never need them." "So do I," Sarah said. "But hope is not a strategy. That's why we have both, the sword and the shield together." The council approved full production of the shield technology. Within 2 years, every human world would be protected. They also approved continued development of offensive weapons. The balance had to be maintained. That was how humans worked. They prepared for the best and the worst at the same time. They built walls and swords, shields and spears. They hoped for peace but planned for war. They reached out in friendship with one hand while holding a weapon in the other. Ambassador Chen called Sarah that evening. "The Vorthen are angry," she said. "They're gathering their fleet. They're talking about teaching humanity a lesson about real power." "What kind of lesson?" Sarah asked. "The usual kind: destruction, conquest, humiliation. They want to prove that mercy is weakness." Sarah felt tired. She had hoped the shield technology would prevent this. She had hoped that being unhurtable would make war pointless before it started. But some species only understood one thing. Some species had to learn through pain. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Months, maybe a year if we're lucky." "That's enough time to deploy the shields on all our core worlds, and to build more weapons if we need them." "I was hoping you would say that." Sarah hung up the phone. She looked at her design spread across her desk. Weapons and shields, death and protection, the eternal balance of her life's work. She thought about her daughter Lisa, now grown and married with children of her own. She thought about the future she wanted for her grandchildren, a future without war, a future without weapons. But to get to that future, they had to survive this present. and survival meant being ready to destroy anything that threatened them. Sarah picked up her pen and started designing something new, something more terrible than anything she had made before, something that would end wars permanently if it was ever used. She hoped it would never be used, but hope was not enough. Marcus returned to Earth to a hero's welcome. The news networks wanted to interview him. The government wanted to give him medals. Schools wanted him to speak to children about courage and duty. He did not feel like a hero. He had killed dozens of beings. He had watched good soldiers die. He had seen things that would haunt him forever. In his dreams, he still heard the screams. But he had also saved lives. He had carried children to safety. He had shown mercy to enemies who surrendered. He had proved that strength and kindness could exist in the same person. The balance was always there. Death and life, destruction and salvation. You could not have one without the other. "How do you do it?" a reporter asked him during one interview. "How do you switch from fighting to saving? How do you kill someone one moment and help someone the next?" Marcus thought about the question. It was the same question everyone asked him. It was the question he asked himself. "I don't switch," he said finally. "They're both part of the same job, protecting people. Sometimes protection means fighting. Sometimes it means helping. Sometimes it means killing enemies so that innocents can live. A good soldier knows when to do each." "And how do you know which one to do?" "You feel it, in your gut, in your heart. You look at a situation and you know what it needs. Sometimes it needs violence. Sometimes it needs kindness. Sometimes it needs both at the same time." The reporter nodded, but Marcus could see she didn't really understand. That was okay. Most people didn't understand. They thought warriors were simple creatures. Kill or be killed. Fight or die. But real warriors were complicated. They had to be. The universe was complicated, and humanity's place in it was the most complicated thing of all. The Galactic Council called an emergency session when the Vorthan fleet began to move. The Vorthan had officially declared their intention to invade human space. Other species were being pressured to join them or face consequences. Ambassador Chen stood before the assembly. She was old now, but her voice was still strong. "We do not want war," she said. "We have never wanted war. Every conflict humanity has fought in this galaxy has been defensive. We have never attacked first. We have never conquered territory. We have never enslaved populations." "You have defeated many species," the Vorthan representative challenged. "You have crushed armies and broken nations." "Yes, when they attacked us, when they left us no choice, and even then we showed mercy. We helped rebuild. We offered friendship to former enemies. The Keithrani are now our allies. They chose to join us." "Weakness disguised as virtue." "No, strength choosing restraint. There is a difference, a big difference." The Vorthan laughed. It was an ugly sound full of contempt. "There is no difference. Power is power. You use it or you lose it. That is the only law of the universe." Ambassador Chen looked at him. Her eyes were cold now. The kindness was still there, but something else had joined it, something ancient and dangerous. "You think mercy is weakness," she said. "You think kindness is softness. You look at our warriors helping wounded enemies and you see foolishness." "Yes, because it is foolish." "Then let me tell you something about humans. Our scientists spend their lives designing weapons that could destroy your entire species. We have bombs that could crack your home world in half. We have plagues that could wipe out every Vorthan in existence. We have technologies you cannot imagine, weapons that would give you nightmares if you knew they existed." The chamber was silent. Every alien was listening now. "We do not use these weapons," Ambassador Chen continued. "Not because we are weak, because we are strong, strong enough to choose mercy, strong enough to help instead of destroy, strong enough to believe that today's enemy can be tomorrow's friend." She paused. Her voice dropped lower, but somehow it filled the entire chamber. "But if you force us to use them, we will. If you threaten our existence, we will defend it with everything we have. And we will not stop until the threat is gone, completely gone, permanently gone. The Vorthan representative shifted uncomfortably. For the first time in his long life, doubt flickered in his 4 eyes. You would destroy an entire species. We would do whatever it takes to survive. That is also part of what we are. Mercy has limits. Kindness has boundaries. Push us past those limits and you will see a different side of humanity. A side that won 1,000 wars on our home world. A side that conquered a planet and then reached for the stars. A side that fears nothing because we have already faced our own worst nature and survived it. She leaned forward. So here is our offer: peace, trade, cooperation. We can be allies, we can be friends. We can build something together that benefits everyone in this galaxy. Her voice hardened like steel. Or we can be enemies. And in that case, I promise you, the Vorthan will become a cautionary tale that the galaxy tells for 1,000 years. Children will learn your name as a warning about what happens when you push humanity too far. The chamber was completely silent. The Vorthan representative looked at Ambassador Chen. He saw the kindness in her eyes, but he also saw something else now, something ancient and terrible, something that had evolved on a world where survival was never guaranteed, where every day was a fight against predators and rivals and the environment itself. For the first time in his long life, he was truly afraid. In the end, the Vorthan chose peace. It was not an easy peace. There were negotiations that lasted months. There were compromises on both sides. There were moments when war seemed inevitable, when fleets moved toward battle positions and weapons were aimed and ready. But humanity held firm. They offered friendship with one hand and held weapons with the other. They showed mercy but made clear that mercy had limits. They were gentle but not weak, kind but not soft. The galaxy watched and learned. Other species began to imitate humanity's approach. Former enemies became trading partners. Wars became less common. The shadow of human weapons kept the peace even when diplomacy failed. Kira, the diplomat, became famous throughout the galaxy. She traveled to many worlds, explaining humanity to those who did not understand them. They are contradictions, she would say to crowds of curious aliens. They can be cruel and kind, destructive and creative. They build weapons and hospitals with equal skill. They train warriors to kill and teach them to heal. How is this possible? Her audiences would ask. How can one species be so many things at once? Because they accept what they are. They do not pretend to be only good or only bad. They are both, and they try to make choices that balance these natures. It seems difficult. It is very difficult, but it works. Humanity survives. Humanity grows. Humanity makes friends of enemies and turns destroyers into protectors. She would pause then and look at her audience. My people attacked them. We killed their colonists. We thought we would conquer them easily. Instead, they conquered us. And then they helped us rebuild. They gave us food and medicine and technology. They made us their allies instead of their subjects. Why, the audience would ask, always the same question. Because that is what humans do. They fight hard and then they forgive. They destroy and then they build. They remember their enemies' crimes but choose to move past them. She would smile then. It took me many years to understand, but now I think I do. Humans are not strong despite their mercy. They are strong because of their mercy. It takes more strength to forgive than to hate. It takes more power to help than to destroy. Anyone can kill. It takes a special kind of being to choose life when death is easier. Dr. Sarah Park retired eventually. She was tired of designing weapons. She wanted to paint flowers and spend time with her grandchildren. She wanted to remember what peace felt like. But before she left, she completed one final project. A device that could neutralize any weapon in a large area. A machine that could stop any attack before it started. The ultimate defense against war itself. If this works, she told James, who had become a lead scientist himself, war becomes impossible. No one can hurt anyone within the device's range. And then what? James asked. Then we talk, we trade, we cooperate, we find other ways to resolve our differences, differences that don't involve killing. Do you think it will really work? Sarah smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was hope in it, real hope. I don't know, maybe not, but it's worth trying. Isn't that what humanity has always done? Try things that shouldn't work and somehow make them work anyway. James nodded. He understood now what he hadn't understood years ago when he first arrived at the station. Humans weren't logical. They weren't efficient. They were messy and complicated and full of contradictions. But that was their strength. They could hold opposing ideas in their minds and act on both. They could fight and heal. They could destroy and create. They could be warriors who showed mercy and scientists who built weapons. And somehow, against all odds, against all logic, that combination worked. It had worked on Earth for thousands of years. It would work in the galaxy for thousands more. Marcus Stone became a teacher after he retired from active service. He trained the next generation of soldiers. He taught them to fight and to think, to kill and to question, to destroy and to protect. The hardest part, he would tell his students, is not the fighting. Fighting is simple. Point and shoot. Move and cover. Follow your training. Anyone can learn to fight. Then what's hard, they would ask. Knowing when to stop. Knowing when mercy is the right choice. Knowing when to spare an enemy who might become a friend. Knowing when to put down your weapon and pick up a bandage. That's the hard part. That's what separates a soldier from a killer. How do we learn that? Marcus would pause. He would think about all the battles he had fought, all the lives he had taken, all the lives he had saved. The faces came back to him sometimes in dreams and quiet moments. You learn by making mistakes, he would say. You learn by crying over the choices you got wrong. You learn by celebrating the choices you got right. You learn by being human, by accepting that you will not always be right, but you will always try to be good. His students didn't always understand. That was okay. They would learn. They would fight their own battles and make their own choices. Some would choose well, some would choose poorly, but they would all try. That was the human way, always trying, always reaching, always hopping for something better while preparing for something worse. Ambassador Chen served until she was very old. She saw humanity join the Galactic Council as a full member, with voting rights and a permanent seat. She saw former enemies become allies. She saw the Vorthan apologize for their aggression and ask to learn from humanity's example. She saw the galaxy change because of what humanity had shown them. On her last day, she gave a final speech to the council. The chamber was full. Every species had sent representatives. Even the Vorthan were there, their blue faces solemn and respectful. When we first came to the stars, she said, her voice still strong despite her age, you thought us weak. You saw our mercy and called it softness. You saw our kindness and called it foolishness. You thought you could conquer us easily. She looked around the chamber. So many species, so many former enemies, so many friends. Now you know the truth. Mercy is a choice of the strong. Kindness is the wisdom of the powerful. We could have conquered you all. We could have burned your worlds and enslaved your peoples. We had the weapons. We had the soldiers. We had the will to survive at any cost. She smiled. But we chose differently. We chose to help instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy, to make friends instead of subjects. We chose the harder path, the longer path, the path that required more strength and more courage. Her voice grew soft. This is what humanity is. We create warriors who show mercy and scientists who build weapons. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. We hold death in one hand and life in the other. She lifted both hands, palms up, like she was offering something precious. And we choose life. Every time we choose life. not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to make that choice. The chamber erupted in applause. For the first time in galactic history, every species celebrated the same thing: the strange, complicated, contradictory creatures called humans. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of space, a human child looked up at the stars and wondered what adventures awaited her. She didn't know about the wars that had been fought or the weapons that had been built. She didn't know about the sacrifices and the struggles and the difficult choices. She only knew that the universe was peaceful and full of friends, that aliens came to visit and brought wonderful gifts, that the stars were beautiful and waiting to be explored. That was enough. That was what all the warriors and scientists had worked for. Not glory, not power, not conquest. Just a child looking at stars and dreaming of wonder instead of war. Humanity had done impossible things. They had created warriors who showed mercy and scientists who built weapons. They had balanced destruction and creation, death and life. They had walked the narrow path between strength and kindness. And in the end, against all odds, against all expectations, against everything the galaxy thought it knew about power and survival, they had won the most important battle of all. The battle for peace. The battle for a future where children could dream without fear. That was humanity's greatest achievement, not the weapons they built or the wars they won, but the choice they kept making over and over again to be better than they had to be, to show mercy when cruelty was easier, to offer help when walking away was simpler, to be warriors who showed mercy and scientists who built weapons, holding both in balance, using both for the same ultimate goal. Peace, life, hope. The stars looked down on them and wondered at what they saw. These strange beings who could destroy everything but chose to build instead. These contradictions made flesh. These humans.